She stood behind the microphone in a borrowed black dress, watching 300 people applaud a man she had trusted with everything she had. He descended that marble staircase like royalty, his arm linked with a woman whose last name opened every door in the city. 3 weeks earlier, that same man had kissed her forehead and whispered that she was his entire world, and that nothing would ever change that. He had taken $62,000 from her, money secured against the only thing her late father had ever left behind. He told her it was an investment, a sure thing, something that would build the life they had been dreaming about together for years. But there was no investment. There never had been. And the man she loved had used her savings to build a costume for a richer woman's life. She was never supposed to be in that ballroom. A last-minute replacement. A singer called in because the original performer had fallen ill. If that phone call had never come, she might have lost her father's house without ever knowing why. But she was there now, standing in the one place she had always felt safe, the stage. And this time the stage was asking something of her. Every document, every screenshot, every voice recording was inside the bag at her feet, packed weeks ago on a sleepless night she could not explain. She looked out at a room full of champagne glasses and tailored suits, and realized that the truth was standing at the microphone tonight. The billionaire's daughter was glowing beside a man who had rehearsed every smile, every word, every gesture, like a performance that never ended. And the woman hired to sing at this engagement party was the woman that same groom had proposed to just 8 weeks before. What she did next did not just expose one man. It cracked open an entire operation built on stolen names and borrowed lives. Stay with me, because what happened inside that ballroom will stay with you long after this story ends. And it all begins right now. 8 weeks before that chandelier-lit ballroom, on an ordinary Tuesday evening, a man named Nolan knelt on the kitchen floor of a small apartment. There was no restaurant, no crowd, just the hum of a refrigerator and a grocery store bouquet of white daisies wrapped in brown paper. He held out a ring with a thin silver band and a small sapphire stone. Not a diamond, because years ago she had told him diamonds felt like performance. Sapphires, she had said once in passing, felt like sincerity, and he had remembered that detail without ever being reminded of it. Her name was Jade, a 29-year-old vocalist who had spent a decade performing at weddings, hotel lounges, and small-town showcases across the region. She said yes before she even finished reading his face, and the tears came so fast she had to set the phone on speaker when she called her younger sister. Her sister Britt answered on the second ring, heard the crying, and started crying too before a single word had been spoken between them. They had been together long enough that Jade had stopped imagining any version of her future where Nolan was not already standing in it. The proposal did not feel like a surprise. It felt like something that had always been coming had finally walked through the door and sat down. She had no idea it was the opening move of a game she had never agreed to play. 3 weeks later, Nolan sat across from her at that same kitchen table, with a look she would later recognize as rehearsed calm. He told her about a private investment window closing in 72 hours. High entry, enormous return, the kind of thing that never came around twice. He said he had already committed every dollar he had and still needed more to meet the minimum, and he held both her hands while he said it. Steady hands, no tremor, not even a blink out of rhythm. He told her the house would never actually be at risk because the deal would close in 60 days. Jade sat with it for 4 days, turning it over the way she always handled heavy things, alone and quietly inside her own silence. She had trusted this man through everything, and he had never once given her a reason to doubt him. Not once in all that time. So she went to the bank on a Tuesday morning with shaking hands and signed her father's house on Winslow Lane as collateral for a $62,000 loan. She transferred the money into the account he had given her, and Nolan kissed her temple and whispered that she had just secured their future together. 2 days later, he left for what he called a development summit in another city, and the calls came every morning like clockwork after that. He texted every night. He asked about Britt. He remembered small details she mentioned only once, and everything felt perfectly normal. The calls were not love. She just did not know that yet. The calls were maintenance, carefully timed signals designed to keep her still and unquestioning. On the morning of the 8th week, Jade received a call from a woman named Odessa, an event coordinator she had worked with for 3 years. The original vocalist for a private event at the Pembroke estate had been hospitalized suddenly, and Odessa needed a replacement by 6 that evening. The client was Harlan Kavanaugh, one of the 5 most powerful real estate developers in the state, a name that opened doors others could not even find. The fee was $3,500, and Jade said yes before Odessa even finished the sentence, because that money meant breathing room she desperately needed. She spent the afternoon pressing her black performance dress and curling her hair, then tried to call Nolan to share the news. He did not answer, but 4 minutes later a text arrived. Warm, brief, perfectly timed, telling her he might be unreachable, but that he was proud of her. She smiled at the screen, wrote back that she loved him, then drove to the Pembroke estate and entered through the service door, thinking only about her opening song. The Pembroke estate was everything its reputation had promised. 40-foot ceilings, marble floors that caught the chandelier light and threw it back doubled. White orchids in gold vases lined every table, and the silence in that room before the guests arrived felt expensive in a way Jade had never experienced. She found the stage, confirmed her set with the sound technician, and looked out over the filling room as something tight in her chest finally loosened. The stage had always been the one place where everything else went quiet. No debt, no waiting, no unanswered questions, just her voice and a room. At 7:41, the double doors at the top of the grand staircase opened. The room fell silent, and the host announced the honored couple of the evening. Jade raised the microphone. Her eyes found the staircase, and every system in her body stopped at the same time. He was wearing a deep navy tuxedo, his hair groomed exactly the way she had always known it, and he was using the wide public smile she had never trusted. Beside him, her hand resting in the crook of his elbow, was Felicity Kavanaugh, Harlan's daughter, radiant in an ivory gown with auburn hair pinned at the neck. Felicity had no idea that the woman hired to sing at her engagement party was the woman her groom had proposed to 8 weeks ago. The room erupted in applause. Harlan Kavanaugh beamed from the front table, and Nolan walked his future bride down the staircase without once looking at the stage. Then he did. Their eyes met across the full width of the room, and his smile did not fall dramatically. It simply switched off like a circuit. What replaced it was not guilt or panic, but something colder and faster. A calculation, a scan for exits, an assessment of damage happening behind his eyes. And Jade, standing at that microphone with $62,000 of her dead father's legacy in this man's account, felt something shift inside her. It was not heartbreak, it was clarity. Total and sharp and completely without mercy. The kind that arrives when the last excuse finally dies. She did not cry, and she did not leave. Because the thing about a woman who has held everything together for years is that when the ground disappears, she stands on the air. As the host gestured toward her to begin singing, she stepped forward, and the room settled into the expecting quiet that always comes before music. Into the microphone, in a voice that did not shake, she said, "Before this evening continues, I need to say something to every person in this room." The applause died instantly. Felicity frowned, and Harlan Kavanaugh set down his glass with the quiet precision of a man who pays attention to unexpected silences. She said, "The man on that platform proposed to me 2 months ago." Then she raised her left hand and the sapphire ring caught the chandelier light. She told the room he had asked her to take a $62,000 loan against her family home for an investment that never existed and never would. She said she was only standing here tonight because the original singer was hospitalized, and that is how close this truth came to never surfacing at all. The silence that followed physically broke something inside that room. 300 people held their breath, and nobody moved for what felt like a full minute. Nolan laughed, short and controlled, the polished sound of a man who had talked his way out of difficult rooms before. And he looked at Harlan with practiced ease. But Jade was already reaching into her performance bag. The bag she had packed 3 weeks ago on a sleepless night when something unnamed had pushed her past waiting. She said she had 38 text messages, voice recordings, engagement photos, bank receipts, and every single document that proved exactly what he had done. Then she looked directly at Felicity, not with cruelty, but with the quiet honesty of a woman who had nothing left to lose, speaking to one who still had everything to protect. Felicity turned to Nolan, her voice low and completely controlled, and said 2 words. "Is this true?" Then added, "Do not manage me right now." He said nothing, and the silence answered in a way that no words could have walked back. And Felicity's face changed as something behind her eyes finally confirmed itself. Harlan Kavanaugh was already on his phone, his legal team, his private investigator, because a man like Harlan was never more than 1 call away from the truth. Within 30 minutes, the picture that emerged was not just damaging, it was devastating. The firm Nolan had registered under did not exist at any verifiable address. The investment portfolio was fabricated, the credentials were invented, the car was rented, the watch was purchased 12 days earlier, and the apartment was month to month. There was no wealth, only the performance of it, sustained, detailed, and specifically calibrated to survive exactly the level of scrutiny a rich family would apply. Investigators confirmed Nolan had researched the Kavanaugh family deliberately for months before arranging a single introduction. He had mapped the inheritance and calculated the timeline. This was not opportunism, it was a campaign. And Jade's $62,000 had funded the costume he wore to steal another woman's entire future. Felicity Kavanaugh removed her engagement ring, and she did not throw it. She set it down gently on the platform with a deliberateness more final than any dramatic gesture. For one moment in the middle of everything, the 2 women looked at each other across that room. 2 people who had given real things to the same man's fiction. Nolan was removed by security, and the phones were already recording, already uploading, and the footage was moving through the world faster than he could run. Harlan filed a civil fraud complaint within 48 hours, and investigators confirmed Nolan had operated versions of this scheme before in different cities under different names. The charges included wire fraud, identity fraud, financial deception, and conspiracy to commit inheritance fraud. He was convicted on every single count, 9 years federal. Jade recovered every dollar through the civil settlement. The house on Winslow Lane was never touched, the bank was repaid, and the debt was gone forever. Britt sat across the kitchen table one evening and asked why Jade was crying and smiling at the same time. And Jade told her everything from the beginning. Britt held her hand across the table for a long time without saying anything, then whispered that their father would have been so proud of what she did. 10 months later, Jade stood at the microphone of her first headline concert. 250 seats, her name on the marquee, Britt in the front row already crying. Before she sang a single note, she said into the microphone, "I used to think the stage was where I escaped the hard things. Now I know it is where I prove they did not win." You know this feeling somewhere inside you. The moment you gave someone your complete trust and watched them carry it toward a door that was never meant for you. Was there a moment when your own instincts tried to warn you about someone long before the proof arrived? And did you listen? Or did you wait too long? Always remember that the truth does not need a perfect moment to arrive. Sometimes it walks in through a side entrance that nobody planned and changes everything. Never believe that the person who stays quiet is the person without power, because silence can be a woman deciding exactly what she is about to do next. If someone is asking you to risk the last thing your family left you, love should never require you to put your foundation on someone else's table. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that courage sometimes looks like a woman standing still when everything around her is falling apart, then do one thing. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and join this growing family of people who still believe that honest voices can shake the walls of any room they enter. Press the like button to share a little love with this story and help us carry these words to someone out there who quietly needs to hear them tonight. Every time you share one of these stories, you hand another person the very same chance to feel exactly what you felt sitting here with me right now. Until next time, stay gentle and stay honest. And never underestimate the quiet power of one woman who simply refused to go silent when it mattered most. Sometimes the truth only needs a microphone and someone brave enough to hold it. And maybe, just maybe, for someone listening tonight, that person is you.